The sun poured straight down as if someone had clamped a bronze pan over the sky. All of Drywell village had shrunk around the only stone well in the scorched square. Sand slid thinly over the courtyard, rasping under our cracked heels. I stood in a narrow strip of shade cast by a mud wall, pressing my back into the cooler, crusted clay. My hands cradled an empty cloth sack, weightless as a promise that never arrived. Sweat slid down my spine, itching, and I had nothing left to wipe it away. If I passed out right there, no one would bother dragging me into the shade. In Drywell, a fallen man was just another obstacle to step around. Around the well's mouth, the men had gathered into a crooked ring, sunburnt shoulders bare, cloth wrapped around their hips, their eyes all fixed in the same direction. In the distance, a tarp-covered wagon wobbled into the dusty square. Its wheels ground over stone, squealing like an old skeleton trying to walk one more day. "They're here again," someone muttered near my ear, and no one needed to ask who they were. In Drywell, everyone knew what Hadron's wagon meant. It meant a rare day of work, a full belly for once, and a few coins to drag our debts one more week down the road. Hadron hopped down from the wagon, his fat belly jiggling beneath a filthy sash. The silver on the chain at his throat flashed once in the sun, mocking the whole village. His wrists were wrapped in colored strings, colors of the households that owed him until their children were grown. Hadron's gaze swept over us like a man choosing onions, fresh enough, cheap enough. "Need 5, he said, without bothering to greet anyone. "Carry sacks from here to the river dock. Heavy, hot, 2 coins ahead." 2 coins. My heart kicked once more like someone had dropped a stone into an empty well. 1 coin for Toma's medicine. 1 coin to shave a little off Master Belcor's ledger. Not enough, but better than nothing. The men around the well surged forward at once, shoulders slamming, heads knocking together. Everyone tried to force themselves into Hadron's line of sight, showing veined arms and scarred backs as proof of strength. I left the wall and stepped out of my fragile strip of shade. My legs tingled as they hit the sun, as if the ground had grown one whole drought hotter since yesterday. I forced my back straight and hitched up a belt made too loose by long, hungry days. Past 30, I wasn't old, but hunger and drought had chewed away half of who I was. Hadron pointed as if flicking sand. "This one, that one, and you." The stronger, younger men were pulled out of the ring. A few men exhaled a sound that was half relief, half disappointment, and drifted back to the edges. I edged half a step closer. "Master, I can work too," I said, and even I barely heard my own voice. Hadron glanced at me, the look of a man who'd seen a lifetime of the same type, too thin, too tired, likely to drop. He curled his lip and spat into the sand, a handspan from my foot. "You," Hadron snorted, drawing the word out like the idea itself was funny. "You can barely stand. What sack could you carry?" "I used to work the salt warehouses on the edge of the scorched sea," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Carried stone-heavy sacks all day without dropping once." I didn't add that it had been 2 monsoon seasons ago. In Drywell, time ate men faster than salt ate iron. One of the chosen men turned and gave me a thin smile. "Leave the work for my boy too," he said, half joking, half pleading. "You're still young. 1 more day of hunger won't kill you." Both lines were lies, but in this village sometimes lying was the only way to swallow the truth. His boy was probably starving too. As for me, 1 more day like yesterday might honestly kill me. I took another half step, feeling like I was shoving even my shadow toward him. "I'll take half pay," I said, "or less. I just need the work." The air around the well seemed to solidify. In Drywell, men underpriced themselves every day, but no one said it out loud in the middle of the square. No one sneered, but no one wanted to see themselves in the mirror that was me. Hadron looked at me again, longer this time. I could tell he wasn't weighing my strength, but how much trouble I'd be. A man collapsing on the road would slow the wagon, cost more water, and burn more curses. "Go home," he said, voice irritated, as if he'd kicked a rock. "If I ever need someone to die on the road, I'll send for you." A few dry laughs cracked out from the mouths around the well, not because the line was funny, but because everyone was relieved. The shame wasn't theirs. My throat burned, but the only things I could swallow were dust and what was left of my pride. Arin turned his back, as if I had vanished from his world. The 5 chosen men hoisted sacks onto their shoulders and staggered after the wagon. The wheels rolled away, dragging a long tail of dust, like a thread between one more day alive and one more day nearly dead. I stood still in the middle of the square, my shadow curled short at my feet. 2 coins slipped out of reach, gently, as if they had never been real. I don't remember how long I stood there. Only when the sun began to slant and the well's shadow stretched across the yard like a smear of oil did I notice my hand still crushing the empty sack. My knuckles were white, the skin around them cracked like dried earth. In my head, there was only one simple equation left. Today, no work. Tomorrow, Master Belcor would visit again, ledger in his arms. Toma would cough more. Lyra would turn her face to the wall so she wouldn't have to see me come back empty-handed. I thought that was the bottom of a bad day. But when dusk touched Drywell's mud brick walls, another set of hoofbeats sounded from the village gate. These hoofbeats weren't like Arin's. Wagon, heavier, more measured, with the taste of iron in every step. People looked up, then lowered their heads even faster. A few mothers snatched their children indoors, slamming doors as if afraid the leftover sunlight would follow. "Black sun," someone whispered, "Dud. Soft enough for the wind to steal, loud enough to knock everyone's heart off beat." A group of black-armored riders entered the square, long cloaks sweeping dust, the chests of their cuirasses engraved with a spiked black sun. They didn't look left or right, just rode straight ahead, as if Drywell were nothing more than a rock by the road. The lead horse stopped right in front of the well, blowing pale breath into the faint chill that had crept in. Its rider pulled back the hood, revealing the lower half of a face masked with a black veil. The eyes above the cloth were black as cold coal, the eyes of Sevra, envoy of the Black Sun sect. Sevra gestured, and the riders all halted at once, the hoofbeats cut off as if sliced with a knife. She took a leather tube from her saddle, drew out a rolled goatskin, the black seal on it like a hole punched into the dusk sky. Sevra's voice rose, not loud, but each word struck the stone around the well like a knock. "In the name of the Black Sun sect and Narul, the god below," she read, "we require a drumkeeper for the world's mouth. 1 weight of gold each month. First month paid in advance." Around me, the remaining men edged back, as if just standing close to that offer might drag misfortune home with them. Someone whispered the old line, "Jobs paid in advance aren't jobs they expect you to return from." In a heartbeat, the once crowded square left a great empty gap before the well, facing the black-clad riders. I suddenly realized I was still standing there, right at the edge of that empty space, the empty sack still in my hand. After a whole day of hunger, rejection, and spit near my feet, I was the only one who hadn't stepped back. And that was the moment I sold the rest of my life to the chasm, even though I didn't know its name yet. Sevra looked at me for a long moment, as if weighing whether what had stuck to her boot was mud or gold. Then she pointed straight down at where I stood. "You," she said. Behind me, someone hurried another step back just to make sure that "you" couldn't possibly be them. I swallowed, my throat dry, as if I were gulping sand. "Name?" Sevra asked. "Arin," I answered. It sounded like I just signed a paper whose letters I couldn't read. Sevra nodded slightly. She turned to the rider beside her and spoke loud enough for the whole square to hear. "Record, Arin, Drywell Village, drumkeeper for the world's mouth." From a distance, that new title sounded like a sentence read to the wrong man. Sevra turned back toward me. "Do you have a family?" she asked. "Yes," I said. In my mind, the dark hut rose up. Lyra's body turned to the wall, Toma curled up coughing under a thin blanket. "Good," Sevra said. "Then you have a reason not to run away on the road." The men behind me shivered as if someone had dragged a wind from the chasm all the way into the square.
Back.
A black-robed priest brought a small leather pouch and offered it up to Sevra. She opened it and drew out a square ingot of gold. Heavy in her gloved palm, the gold didn't gleam as brightly as I'd imagined. It was heavy, dense, like a piece of sunset frozen solid. Sevra tossed the gold to the ground at my feet. "First month," she said. "Tomorrow, when the sun touches the rim of your well, you will be at the village gate, carrying what little you need to stay alive. If you do not come, the Black Sun sect will come looking for you. And then we will speak with your wife and child instead." I bent down and picked up the gold. It was so heavy I almost needed both hands. People like to say money could buy more food, more medicine, more time. Few mentioned that it could also buy a death that arrived right on time. Sevra turned her horse, her black cloak sweeping a line through the sand. The riders turned with her, riding out of Drywell in silence like a streak of black ink withdrawing from a page. Only when the hoofbeats were nothing but echoes did Drywell start breathing again. Every gaze turned toward me, not because my name had been read, but because of the gold weighing down my palms. I hugged it to my chest, as if someone might snatch away this prepaid death from me. I turned my back and walked toward my hut. Lyra was in the exact same place when I stepped inside. Back to the door, eyes on the cracked mud wall. Toma slept fitfully beside her, his chest rising and falling as fragile as a sheet of paper. I set the gold bar down on the plank we used as a table. Metal hitting wood rang dry in the small hut. Lyra didn't turn, but I saw her whole body jolt. "What is that?" she asked softly, not out of fear of waking Toma, but as if she feared the answer itself. "A weight of gold," I said. "The first month."
I don't know what to do anymore.
Lyra sat up, slowly, as if every bone had grown 10 years older at the word gold. She turned, and her sunken eyes latched onto the gold on the table. For a heartbeat, I saw the woman Lyra had been before the droughts. Bright eyes, straight back, basket in hand on her way to the well. Then that image dissolved, leaving only the frail wife before me, chin trembling. "They paid in advance," she said. "Do you remember my mother saying?" I remembered.
Tell me what you need.
Jobs paid in advance aren't jobs they expect you to return from. "We need the money," I said. "Toma needs medicine. We can pay a little of what we owe Belcor. Belcor will take your gold, but he won't give your life back," Lyra replied. She reached out and touched the bar, as if testing whether it was real or just a rock painted gold. "Narul doesn't give anyone anything for free," she whispered. I sat down beside the table. "If I don't go, they'll come for you and Toma," I said. The hut suddenly felt smaller, as if the mud walls were closing in on 3 people and one cold lump of gold between them. Lyra looked at Toma, then at me. "You will come back," she said, her voice not a prayer but a command. I let out a small laugh, unsure if it was because her words were absurd or because if I didn't laugh, I might cry. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept watch beside the plank, staring at the gold like an eye closed, waiting to open at the chasm. When the sky began to pale, I broke off a small part of the gold into a few coins, wrapped them in cloth, and hid them in a corner of the hut for Lyra. The rest I would take with me like a one-way ticket to the world's mouth. When the sun touched the rim of the well, I stood at the village gate, just as Sevra had ordered. Lyra and Toma didn't come to see me off. I guess that was the best way to leave a life behind. Pretend it would still be there waiting when you came back. The Black Sun sect riders appeared right on cue, a fresh streak of black ink written across the horizon. I stepped out of the gate's shadow and joined the line of black shapes heading toward the world's mouth. The scorched sea opened before us like a colossal stone pan, So flat and empty it felt as if the middle of the world had been eaten away. The black sun riders moved in a line, their black cloaks like strokes of ink, drawn across the yellow stone. I walked along the very edge of them, like a stray shadow clinging to the rim of a black storm. The sun climbed higher, then hung over us like a blind eye that stared without ever blinking. No one spoke. Their silence wasn't the silence of tired men, but of people used to letting unpleasant things pass without question. The sand beneath our feet gradually gave way to a flat layer of rock, cracked like the skin on my wrists. Now and then, I saw low stone mounds jutting up, like broken teeth left from some beast whose jaw had been mostly pulled. On some of the stones, the black sun emblem was carved, rough but deep, as if Narul himself had clawed it into the rock. "Markers of the black sun," a voice spoke above me. I looked up. A rider without a hood, only a low steel cap, sunburnt face, and patchy stubble, was looking down at me. "Don't stray from the markers," he said. "Out there," he pointed off to where the flat rock stretched to forever, "is where the god below can reach his claws closest to the surface." I followed his hand with my eyes and felt as if the ground under my feet had thinned. "Narul can reach up here?" I asked. "Narul can reach anywhere there is shadow," he answered, "but the chasm is where he is closest. Name's Kesh," he added. "If you collapse on the road, I'll be the one to toss your body off the path." He said it the way one might say, "Remember to drink," a simple reminder. I couldn't manage a laugh. By noon, we pulled into a slightly sunken stretch of rock where a few standing stones cast narrow stripes of shade. I sank down with my back against a carved stone pillar bearing the black sun. The stone was so hot my shirt felt glued to it, but at least there was no sun on me. A black sun priest went around handing out small water skins to each of us. When the skin touched my hands, I almost cried just hearing the water inside. "Drink slowly," the priest said, speaking for the first time. He had a long, clean-shaven face with a small black sun tattooed in a ring on his forehead. "Narul dislikes those who waste water," he added, almost as a joke. I didn't ask what Narul did like. When the sun began to lean, we moved on. By evening, a band of changed color appeared on the horizon, the color of stone, not just sunburnt, but scorched from underneath by something below. "The edge of the world's mouth," Kesh said. "Tomorrow you'll hear Narul for the first time."
We have to try.
I thought the drum was to keep him asleep, I said. "You don't hear anyone snore unless they're sleeping," Kesh replied. "Narul snores in stone and bone." I didn't ask anything more. That night we camped directly on the cracked stone. The riders took turns on watch while the priests set up a small drum in the center of camp. It was smaller than the festival drums I'd seen in Drywell, but its skin was stretched thick, the wooden frame black and glossy, as if soaked in smoke for 100 years. A priest sat in front of it, took up the mallet, and began beating a steady, low rhythm that sank into the stone. Each beat was like a stone thrown into a deep well, its echo going on and on. "We train your ears before we reach the chasm," Kesh said, sitting down beside me. "Later, when you sleep, if the drum stops, you'll wake in a panic," he said. "At the chasm, your job is to make sure no one, not even you, ever has to wake up like that." I watched the priest's hand rise and fall with mechanical steadiness, thinking of Narul's veins somewhere deep beneath the rock. "The drumkeeper before me?" I asked. "Jarek," Kesh said. "He beat the drum for Narul for 3 years. Then one night he stopped." "Stopped from exhaustion?" I asked. "Stopped because he thought Narul wouldn't notice," Kesh said. "Narul always notices." "Where is Jarek now?" I asked. "If you ask the Black Sun sect," Kesh said, "he was relieved of duty. If you ask me," he looked down at the cracked stone beneath us, "he's lying somewhere inside these fractures." That night I slept in jagged pieces, my ears clinging to the drumbeat the way a hand clings to a cliff edge. Every time the rhythm slowed even slightly, my heart jerked with it. When I closed my eyes, I saw the chasm in my imagination, a black mouth open on the face of the world, ringed with stone teeth and so deep no echo ever came back. When I opened them, I saw only a sky full of stars and a small drum, but the feeling of standing on a precipice never faded. The next morning we set out early before the sun had time to press the ground down one more time. By mid-morning we met a salt caravan coming the other way, its wheels crusted with white salt like bones. At the head of the caravan rode a thin old trader, skin wrinkled like a leather pouch, eyes squinting under a faded headscarf. When he saw the black sun emblem, he tightened his reins and muttered something that sounded like a prayer. Severa raised a hand and our group slowed. The old trader pressed his hands together at his chest and bowed to her. "The road to the world's mouth is clear, Farid?" Severa asked. "Clear, for those who keep the rhythm," Farid answered, his eyes flicking briefly toward me. "You're taking another one down there?" he asked. "The drumkeeper," Severa replied, voice flat as if reading the name of an item in a ledger. Farid looked at me longer than necessary. "You have a mother?" he asked suddenly. "Yes," I said, not understanding why that question hurt my throat more than the sun did. "If you come back, tell her Farid once advised you to turn around," he said. "And if you don't come back, she'll understand on her own." Severa didn't seem offended. "Thank you for the warning, Farid," she said. "We will not turn around." The salt caravan pulled aside to make way for the black sun. As we passed, I heard Farid mutter one more line behind me, "Keep the beat, boy." By the time the men and salt carts were no more than dots in the glare, we were fully inside the zone of changed stone. The rock here wasn't just cracked, it looked stretched, the edges of fissures curving downward like skin pinched hard. The air smelled of something strange, not sand, not sweat, but wet stone, though there wasn't a drop of water anywhere. "You feel it now," Kesh said quietly. "That's Narul's breath coming through the stone." By day's end, the horizon ahead was no longer a faint smudge, but a dark band slicing across the world. The world's mouth, the chasm, finally revealed itself, a colossal tear in the earth, so wide that our entire company would fit into it as no more than a smudge of ink. I stood at the brink of the chasm, looked down, and saw nothing but darkness. Not the darkness of night or a room without lamps, but a thick, viscous dark, like something black and heavy was pushing up beneath the stone. Somewhere down there, Narul, the god below, was sleeping. And waiting up here on this rim was the drum I would have to beat until he stopped dreaming. They didn't let me stand at the edge for long. Kesh set a hand on my shoulder, tugging me back a few steps like dragging a child away from a hearth. "New ones always look too long," he said. "Narul likes eyes that fall." From the brink, the stone rose into a plateau where the black sun had built their camp. Tents, weapon racks, horse posts, wooden stakes driven into the rock. It all looked like a makeshift fortress guarding the edge of something that shouldn't exist. At the center of camp, closer to the edge than anything else, stood a wooden platform piled on stakes driven into the stone, and on it sat my drum. This drum was many times larger than last night's, its skin the size of a door, its wooden frame so black it nearly swallowed the light. Beneath the platform's edge, chains as thick as wrists plunged straight down into the chasm, vanishing into the darkness below. "They tie the drum to the rock," Kesh explained. "Every beat you strike, Narul hears," he said. They led me onto the platform over a narrow wooden bridge without railings. With each step, I heard the wood groan beneath me and something much farther groan beneath all this stone. On the platform, a priest was waiting for me, not the one from before, but an old man with a hunched back, cropped white hair, and eyes sunk like twin hollows in rock. "Arin of Drywell Village," he said, as if reading off a list. "I am Master Thalin, keeper of this drum before you," he said. I looked at him, more surprised than reassured. "I thought the keeper before me was Jarek," I said. Thalin snorted. Jarek was the one holding the mallet, he said. The keeper is the one who keeps the man with the mallet from being stupid. Now you are both, he added. He handed me a pair of drumsticks, not ordinary wood, but black, heavy, and cold under my fingers, like stone. Ashwood soaked in Narul's blood, Thalen said, voice almost casual. I didn't ask what a god's blood looked like. Listen carefully, Thalen said. This drum beats to Narul's rhythm, not yours. You think you keep him asleep. In truth, he allows you to think so. Your job is to keep this world believing that the beat is still steady. Thalen motioned for me to sit on the wooden stool before the drum. Rest the sticks on the skin, he said. I obeyed. The drum skin was cold, but beneath it something was not still at all. A very slow, very deep rhythm thrummed there, like the heart of something enormous beating through 3 layers of stone. Feel it yet? Thalen asked. I nodded, my throat going dry again. Now strike to match it. No faster, no slower, he said. I lifted the sticks and brought them down. The sound that came out wasn't as loud as I'd imagined, but thick and heavy, dropping beneath my feet and disappearing. Again, Thalen said. I struck, then struck again, listening to the rhythm under the stone and trying to let my hands merge with it. When I missed the timing, the drum responded with a jarring echo, as if I'd struck against the grain. Below, Narul seemed to turn once, the rock under my stool shifting. Don't poke him, Thalen said mildly. You don't beat Narul awake. You just keep it even enough for him to go on dreaming. All that afternoon I sat on the stool, striking along, hands aching, shoulders numb, but the rhythm beneath the stone never changed. Thalen only left the platform when the sky began to darken. Tonight the priests and I will share the beating, he said. You sleep if you can, he added. I climbed down from the platform, my head still buzzing with the drum's sound. With every step through camp, I heard the drum hitting through the earth. Like the shout of a heart, the whole chasm was living off. My tent was a small canvas near the inner side of camp, just space enough for a blanket and a low wooden chest. Inside there was nothing but the chest, a small water jug, some bandages, and a spare drumstick. That stick was black ash wood as well. I lay down, but my ears refused to let go of the beat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the drum skin, my hands lifting and lowering the sticks, as if the rest of my life had been shrunk into a single movement. Eventually, I drifted off without noticing. I dreamt I was beating the drum, but it wasn't on the platform. It was the ground, the whole face of the world. With every strike, the chasm widened a little, spreading like a crack through a clay bowl. I woke with a start. The drum was still there, steady, deep, as if it had never stopped. I stepped outside. Dawn was close, the eastern edge of the world paling. On the platform, it wasn't Thalen playing, but a younger priest, eyes closed, lips moving with each beat. I watched him for a while and realized he was counting the beats, counting his life, counting how long until his arms could no longer rise. On the second day, Thalen put me on a rotation, one watch beating, one watch resting, under a priest's supervision. Each time I sat on the stool, Narul greeted me with that slow pulse under the stone. By the third day, I began hearing other things between the beats, like someone whispering right behind me each time the drum's sound dropped away. I turned, but there was no one except the chasm.
You hear that, Arin?
Don't listen, Thalen said behind me. I hadn't even asked, listen to what, before he answered. Tom said, Narul speaks in the gap between the beats. Your job is to strike, not to listen. From that day on, I tried to count the rhythm in my head, stuffing the space between beats with numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted to drown out that voice. But sometimes between the numbers, strange syllables slipped in like drafts through a crack. By the end of the first week, the skin of my palms had blistered, and my shoulders and back felt replaced with stone. Kesh stopped by my tent, handing me a cloudy oil that stank. Rub it into your hands, you'll last longer, he said. Thank you, I said, then added, how much longer? Kesh shrugged. "Until Narul gets bored of you," he replied. After that, I went back up onto the platform. Day after day, the drumbeat became the frame everything else hung on. Meals, sleep, fear, hope. Sometimes, standing on the platform edge at night, I looked down into the chasm and thought of Lyra and Toma far away, on a piece of land that didn't tremble to Narul's pulse. I didn't know how long I would beat the drum for Narul, only that with each beat I struck, another day in Drywell passed without me. The 13th day at the chasm began like every other, with the drum. I no longer remembered what it felt like to wake up in silence. In my mind, the drumbeat had replaced roosters, markets, and the sound of the village well. When I stepped out of the tent, Kesh was already waiting, top clasp of his armor undone, dark circles under his eyes. "Your long watch today," he said. "Narul tends to turn when the wind changes," he added. The wind was different that day, not the hot breath from below, but a sharp, cold draft blowing up from the depths. Thalen was already on the platform, back to the chasm, eyes on me, as I stepped onto the narrow wooden bridge. "Today you beat from sunup until it kisses the rim," he said. "Narul grows restless when the seasons turn." I didn't understand how seasons could change in a place of stone and darkness, but Narul seemed to know. The rhythm beneath the stone beat a little harder, like a sleeper suddenly dreaming of falling. I sat down, lifted the sticks, and caught the rhythm. Thalen stepped back, circling the platform, his eyes never leaving my hands. "Don't let the gap stretch," he reminded me. "The gap is where Narul slips his words in." Morning passed in a chain of beats, linked together like iron rings. By midday, clouds began to gather along the horizon, a rare sight over the scorched sea. Not rain clouds, but long, thin gray streaks like smoke stretched out by the wind. The wind turned fully cold, the smell of wet stone thickening even though the ground remained cracked and dry. The rhythm beneath the stone shifted for the first time since I'd arrived, still steady, but deeper, stretched slightly like a long breath. I had to adjust my hands to match, widening the space between strikes. The gap suddenly grew wide enough for something else to slip in. For the first time, I clearly heard a whisper, not wind, not human, a voice very far and very heavy, as if someone were trying to speak through an entire mountain. I almost fell behind the beat. The drumhead snapped back with an unpleasant echo, as if in protest. Under the stone, something shifted position. The whole platform shuddered harder than ever before. I missed a beat, just one beat. But that silence felt deeper than the chasm. In that gap, the voice beneath the stone was no whisper anymore. It spoke my name, not in the tongue of the Black Sun, not in Drywell's speech, but in a language my heart understood, while my ears did not. I jerked and struck down, trying to patch the rhythm. Beneath my feet, the chasm quaked one last time and then subsided. In the camp, a few tent stakes toppled and a windbreak wall splintered. Near the rim, a stretch of ground collapsed, swallowing half of the outermost hitching post. A young priest running across camp lost his footing and skidded toward the newly opened gap. I saw him even from the platform. His hand caught the crack's lip, his legs dangling over emptiness. I had to choose. "Keep striking or drop the mallets and run," Thalen shouted. "Do not stop." I stopped anyway. I threw the sticks down, sprinted across the bridge, and leapt off the platform before Thalen could block me. The ground had split wide like a small mouth, ready to swallow the young priest whole. I lunged, dropped to my knees, and grabbed his arm. His body felt weightless, boneless in my grasp, but the pull from below was as heavy as the whole chasm dragging him down. A roar rose from far below. Not animal, not breaking stone. Narul, the god below, had reacted to the space between beats. I heaved hard, feeling as if I were tearing myself in two, and we both toppled back toward safety. The crack collapsed further, devouring the spot where my knees had been a second before. The camp went silent for several beats, except for the drum. No, for the lack of it. Then the screaming started, not Narul's, but human. Sevra emerged from the middle of camp like a black shadow, cloak sweeping over debris without catching dust. She looked at the new hole, then at me, still gasping on the ground, my hand not yet released from the young priest's arm. "Who told you to leave the drum?" Sevra asked, her voice not loud but sharp. "No one," I said. "I left on my own." The young priest was still trembling, eyes wide, staring into the hole that had almost taken him. Sevra gave him a single glance, then turned to Thalen, who stood on the bridge, pale. "Master Thalen," she said, "did Narul awaken?" Thalen shook his head, slowly but firmly. "No, High Envoy," he said. "He merely turned," he added. Sevra gave a slight nod, as if that answer was sufficient. She turned back to me. "You just kept one priest alive," she said, "but you also just gave Narul a chance to speak." I did not deny it, because in that gap, Narul had spoken my name and added one more sentence. "Arin," that voice had said. "For whom do you beat? Not against whom, but for whom." That night, the camp did not sleep. They planted extra stakes around the collapsed ground, strung ropes, and painted more black suns onto the stone. On the platform, Thalen sat once more, the drum no longer silent. The rhythm had returned to its steady pace, as if it had never been broken. I stood at the base of the platform, bandaged hands at my sides, watching his silhouette bob up and down against the sky. Kesh came to stand beside me, saying nothing for a long while. "What did Jarek do?" I asked, without turning. Kesh sighed, his breath blending with the wind. "He was like you today," he said. "He heard Narul's voice, then left the drum. Difference is, Jarek didn't run off to save anyone. He went to the edge instead. Didn't fall, no one pushed him. He just stepped." I shivered, though the night wind was already cold. "Why?" I asked. "He said Narul had answered him," Kesh replied.
Not here.
"That's the worst thing that can happen to a drumkeeper. Not Narul waking up, but him starting to talk." After Kesh left, Thalen finally called me up to the platform when only wind and drum were left in the camp. He handed me the sticks, his hands trembling slightly. "I have beaten for Narul for half a lifetime," Thalen said quietly. "At first, I also believed I kept him asleep. Then one day I realized Narul is not asleep at all." I swallowed and looked down into the black. "Then what is that beating?" I asked. "It's the sound of him remembering," Thalen answered. "The black sun uses the drum to keep his memory in a mold. The rhythm is a chain. Each strike you make, he remembers his cage, instead of remembering that he's larger than this crack in the earth." A chill ran down my spine, though the wind had eased by then. "So are we saving the world or lulling a god into forgetting who he is?" I asked. Thalen gave a dry laugh, the kind of laugh of someone who's asked that question too many times. "That question doesn't pay you," he said. "Your bar of gold comes from the black sun, not from Narul." "But," Thalen lowered his voice, "Narul has answered you as well now, hasn't he?" I didn't know how he guessed, so I only gave the smallest nod. "What did he ask?" "For whom do you beat?" I answered. Thalen closed his eyes for a moment, as if that question had struck him once, long ago. "Do not answer," he said softly. "Once you answer, you no longer beat for the black sun, and they do not spare those who beat for anyone else." Thalen left the platform, leaving me alone with the drum, the abyss, and Narul's question. I began to beat again, clinging to the taut rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 50th beat, I deliberately slipped, not enough to shake the platform, just enough to pry a small crack between two strikes. In that crack, the voice slid up again. This time, it did not ask. "They chain me with your fear," Narul said, "and they chain you with my fear," he continued. A thought flashed through my mind. If I stopped completely, if the world fell silent, would Narul forget his cage or remember everything at once? I kept beating, my hands shaking, Below, Narl fell silent, but it wasn't the silence of a sleeper. It was the silence of someone waiting for an answer. That night, amid the steady beats my own hands were making, I understood that sooner or later I would have to choose, to beat for the Black Sun or to beat for Narl. 3 days after the ground split, the chasm looked the same, but the camp did not. The tents were huddled closer, ropes crisscrossing like a web, black sun sigils painted so thick on the stone that they were everywhere you looked. As for me, I was no longer allowed anywhere except my tent, the latrine, and the drum platform. 2 Black Sun soldiers escorted me like a condemned man, even though I carried drumsticks, not shackles. "They fear you more than the abyss now," Kesh muttered, appearing at the edge of the path. I didn't answer. I only lifted the mallets a little higher, as if to remind myself why I was here. That noon, a small convoy arrived at the camp, not salt wagons, but carts carrying scrolls and offerings. In the middle of the convoy, I saw Farid's faded coat again. He glanced at the platform, then around, as if looking for someone. Kesh cleared his throat, signaling the guards to pause a heartbeat as they walked me past the carts. Farid slipped off his mule, pretended to inspect a crate, then set a hand on my shoulder as if I were just another porter. With his other hand, he shoved a tightly wrapped scrap of cloth into my palm. "From Drywell," he whispered, just loud enough for me alone. My heart skipped off the drum's rhythm for a beat. "Move!" one of the soldiers snapped, tugging me along. I only managed to open that scrap of cloth after dark, back in my tent between shifts at the drum. Inside were 2 things: a rust-stained coin from home and a torn scrap of paper with a few shaky lines. Lyra's handwriting. "Brother," the first line read, "Mother is weaker. The water tax has risen. The Black Sun takes more from the well. They say because of you, Narl doesn't wake, so we must pay more water," it said. "If Mother dies of thirst, for whom are you beating?" Lyra's question matched Narl's exactly. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, Sevra summoned me just as I stepped down from the platform after a watch on the drum. She stood leaning against a post, arms folded, hood hiding most of her face. "Arin of Drywell," she said, "tomorrow is binding day." I had heard Kesh mention that day, the one when the Black Sun reinforced Narl's chains with blood, oaths, and rhythm. "You will hold the center of the rhythm," Sevra said. "All the lesser drums, all the recitations will follow your beat. If you falter..." She didn't finish, but I understood. "What happens to Drywell if Narul wakes?" she added, this time asking like a person, not a high envoy. I clenched my teeth and didn't answer. Sevra left me with a new feeling. Not only did the Black Sun fear Narul, but Narul was also their excuse to tighten a noose around every village with a well. The night before binding day, they granted me 1 watch off to conserve strength. I spread Lyra's note in front of me, with the 2 black drumsticks beside it. On one side was my sister's question. On the other side was the answer the Black Sun wanted me to choose. Between those 2 was Narul, silent and waiting beneath the stone. I remembered the last festival in Drywell, before the drought, before Mother stopped getting out of bed. The festival rhythm was nothing like the chasm's, a faster, joyful beat, not meant to cage anyone, but to keep people close. I wondered, if rhythm could be a chain, could it also be a key? That night I heard Narul again, not in the gaps, but inside the beat itself. "You know now," the voice said. "They use fear to force me to remember my cage. And they use my name to make you forget your well," he murmured. "If I break my chains, part of the world will crack," Narul said, without embellishment. "But if the chains are drawn tighter, the rest will dry and wither with the Black Sun," he added. "Binding day is when the chains are strongest and weakest," he said. "You can change the rhythm, not stop. If you stop, I grow angry. The stone grows angry. Beat so." "I remember something else," he said. "Not cages, not fear. For whom do you beat, Arin of Drywell?" I opened my eyes. Binding day began under a sky the color of ash. The platform was draped in black cloth, chains polished until they gleamed, like a wound cleaned before being stitched shut. Around the chasm, small drums were set in a ring, their players poised with sticks in hand. Sevra stood at the rim, staring straight at me. Thalin stood beside the drum, one hand resting on its frame as if on the flank of a beast he'd long known. I sat on the stool, the black sticks fitting snugly in my hands. The priests began to chant, their voices weaving together like unseen chords, wrapping around the chasm. Sevra lowered her hand. I raised the sticks and felt Narul's pulse under the stone. That rhythm asked again, "For whom do you beat?" I remembered Mother on her bed, Lyra at the well, Toma's strained smile under the sun. I also remembered Farid saying, "If you return, tell her I advised you to turn back." I brought the sticks down and began to beat, but not in the pattern the Black Sun had taught. I beat Drywell's festival rhythm, the one I'd played to make Mother smile and children dance. The small drums around the chasm stumbled, missed a few strikes, then were forced to fall in with it. The priest misread several words, then tried to bend their prayers around the unfamiliar tempo. The stone underfoot shook differently, not like Narl's anger, but like someone turning over to ease numbness. Sevra frowned, but she did not raise a hand to stop it. Thalin looked at me. Horror flashed in his eyes for a heartbeat, then vanished, replaced by something almost relieved. "For whom do you beat?" Narul asked again, this time through Drywell's rhythm itself. "For those who stand on the rim, not in its belly," I thought, and realized that for the first time my answer didn't shake. Below the stone, Narul laughed, or did whatever passes for laughter in a buried god. The chains shook, not about to snap, but about to slip from where the Black Sun had driven them in. The Black Sun sigils on the stone began to crack, like paint on clay when it meets water. Every drum around the chasm now beat Drywell's rhythm, though the hands striking them had never heard my village's name. The Black Sun incantations suddenly sounded like twisted folk songs, no longer as terrifying as before. Sevra shouted something, but her voice was swallowed by the drum. The stone beneath us began to crack, not outward from the chasm, but in a ring encircling the Black Sun camp. Narul wasn't pushing to climb out. He was tugging the chasm closer to himself, avoiding the land beyond the Black Sun's ring. The whole camp lurched like a great ship whose moorings had been torn. Stakes, tents, windbreaks, weapon racks all began to slide toward the widening ring of cracks. Kesh threw himself into the rush, yanking a young soldier from the crack's edge, then looked up at my platform as if he wanted to curse and laugh at me at once. Thalin grabbed the drum's frame, shouting into my ear, "Don't stop. If you stop now, the whole world shatters." I kept beating Drywell's rhythm, the rhythm of a well, of those who stand at the rim and refuse to be dragged under. The ring of fractures split the camp from the stable land, then began to tilt inward on one side, like a stone door slowly opening into the chasm. Sevra signaled the soldiers to retreat to firm ground, but she herself stayed near the tipping edge, eyes never leaving me. "For whom do you beat, Arin?" she screamed, this time cutting through even the drum to reach my ears. "For those who never get to choose," I breathed, not sure she could hear. The slab of earth bearing the Black Sun camp broke free and slid into the chasm, taking with it tents, stakes, weapons, small drums, and all the painted Black Suns. The platform I sat on straddled the fracture, half on the falling side, half on what remained. Thalin didn't hesitate. He lunged, pouring all his old strength into dragging me towards his solid ground. "Don't stop!" he still yelled, one hand dragging me, the other bringing the stick down on the drum one last time. The far half of the platform broke away, dragging Thalin and the remaining drum with it into the abyss. I lay sprawled on the surviving rock, fingers still unconsciously tapping Drywell's rhythm onto the stone. The chasm was wider than before, but the ring of fractures had stopped at the line, not reaching into land that did not belong to the Black Sun. Narul exhaled beneath the stone, not in anger, but like someone whose noose had loosened. The survivors stood frozen for a long time, then did what people always do after a disaster. They counted one another bandaged wounds and buried what they could. Sevra came to stand before me, her cloak torn, dust coating her from head to toe. "You just killed an entire Black Sun camp," she said, without circling around it. "Narul helped," I replied, my voice ragged. Sevra looked at the newly shaped chasm, deeper, wider, but its edge shifted farther from the villages beyond. "The Black Sun will call this betrayal," she said. "But they can't deny that Narul is still down there," she added. "And that the world behind us hasn't been swallowed," she said. "Do you still want to keep your gold, Arin of Drywell?" she asked, suddenly sounding almost mocking. "I want to keep the well," I said. Sevra nodded as if she'd been waiting for exactly that answer. "Then leave this place before the next envoys arrive," she said. "I will say Narul chose you," she added. "What that means to the Black Sun, I'll let them decide," she said. Kesh shoved a water skin and some rations into my hand, then gripped my fist roughly. "If Narul asks again," he said, "tell him sometimes you beat for me too." I turned my back on the chasm and walked the way the caravans had come, across the discolored stone, over the scorched sea, toward the place with a well and people waiting. On the road, whenever the wind shifted, I heard a very faint beat under my feet, a rhythm that belonged neither to the Black Sun nor entirely to Narul anymore. It was Drywell's rhythm, the rhythm of the well, of those who stand at the rim and refuse to bow. If Narul ever asked again, I knew what I would answer. "I beat for those who thirst and want to drink without trembling," I thought. And the drum inside my chest answered, steady, stubborn, alive.